I'm Zachary Fowler, and you're watching my extra channel, and today we have an extra special thing for you, an interview with the makers of The Promised Land. The Promised Land is a comedy that just aired on YouTube with their pilot episode about the Israelites and their time in the wilderness, but it's styled like Parks and Rec and The Office.
Two hands can build a tent, but many hands can build a pyramid.
It's so funny. I just randomly came across it a couple weeks ago, and I reached out to them and said, hey, let's do a little podcast interview. I wanted to know where this came from, where it's going to. So we have Mitch Hudson about to call on Zoom, and we're going to do a little interview with him and talk about the show and where it's going to go from there. Hello, Mitch. Thanks for joining us today. Can you maybe just start by giving us a brief history of where this all came from and why we just found this on YouTube the other day, and why haven't we seen something like this before?
Yeah, so this week we just launched our pilot episode for The Promised Land. It's been out now a little bit over a month, which has been really exciting to see it already kind of take off and gain an audience, and that's been great for us. And it's a really great confirmation of like, all right, you know, we took kind of a chance on a bit of a different idea, a different approach to telling this story. It's definitely unique. It's definitely something that is different. It was not my original concept. The producers kind of brought it to me. Our associate producer, Sydney, had come up with this idea, and they were basically just like, hey, do you think you could make a TV show that is Moses, but with the camera style of The Office, with like the interviews and with, you know, following the characters around, the documentary style, you know, camera work and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, let me see if there's anything here that I could kind of play with. And I was rereading through Exodus, and I was like, where would be like a good starting place? And I rediscovered that story where Moses holds his hands up over his head during the battle with the Amalekites. And I was like, all right, let me just take this scene and then we just see how this goes. And then it kind of just, I don't know, snowballed from there.
You look at this stuff and you think, yeah, simple enough. You could hold this over your head all day, right?
I can't.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I loved how it started. It was so funny. It just grabbed me right from the beginning. I was like, you know, him complaining about the stick. It's like you put into words like all the things that people are thinking sometimes when you're reading the Bible about the story of the Exodus, like, oh man,
yeah.
You know, it's like some people, I must have heard at least several sermons even in my lifetime of people talking about like, oh, you know, you think it's not that big of a deal to hold up the staff. It's just a stick, you're holding it up. But like once you hold up, I mean, anybody put your hands up for a period of time, and pastors preaching about that very same thing. And then you guys brought it to life, and that first scene right there just like grabbed me. It was just so much fun right from the beginning, the whole story. The kids and I loved watching it, and we just can't wait for the next one. So when is the next one? And are you guys doing these all on YouTube?
I'm not sure if we're going to end up releasing them all on YouTube. I think we're going to be determining that very soon. We are, if everything comes together, and it looks like it probably will, we should be filming 5 more episodes this fall.
Okay.
So we'd film episodes 2 through 6 of the show. This would still be the pilot episode. It was still episode 1 of the show. But the next 5 episodes we're going to film this fall, and then, you know, after we do all the things with post-production and editing and visual effects and all that kind of stuff, I hope we'll be able to get you guys more episodes by next summer.
Okay.
So maybe about like a year after the pilot.
So that's what I was afraid of. So the point of it was, though, to make this as a pilot episode, to be able to pitch it somewhere and to show the efficacy of it.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay.
The whole point was to make the pilot and kind of release it to demonstrate, hey, I know this is a bit of a funky concept, but there is going to be a group of people who want to see this. You know, that we are going to be able to build a fan base, and we have so far. And I think that's really helpful, especially when we go into meeting with distributors, meeting with streaming services, to just say, hey, I know you're going to look at the show and say, well, faith-based comedy doesn't usually work. Is this one going to work? And we can say, look, at least the pilot worked. So, you know, we've got 5 more episodes that people who saw the pilot are going to want to see. So hopefully, yeah, that'll kind of help us with those conversations. And in terms of where it ends up, I think our goal is really just to find any kind of streaming service or distributor that would get us in front of the most people possible. You know, it's not so much about like what's the best deal. It's more about what gets us the most eyes, because at the end of the day, we just want to make a show that people around the world can watch and enjoy.
Well, if I can write you a reference and anybody actually cared, I would have to say that like you guys nailed it. And what people may not understand, you know, like the TV people, and I think it's going to end up having a couple million by the time you get to like keep showing it to people and stuff before you even have to worry about it. It'll sell itself. But at the same time, it's YouTube. So to go from just posting some like interesting commentaries, little snippets and things that you guys posted as you did, which you guys can all see it again, like I said before, linked in the description. You can see the pilot episode and all the prequel stuff they put out. That to build a whole channel and then to put up content and then get a video that gets 500,000 views, right? That's where you're at right now. And on something is like, that's pretty hard. That shows right there the efficacy of that right there. Because if you had put out, if you guys had already done a earlier successful series and you put out this episode, this I think would be at 10 million right now because of YouTube, because it's all about the analytics, right, and the momentum and things like that. And the fact that you went from 0 to 500,000 says that this is 110% what people want to see, and it should be, because there really isn't Christian comedy out there that's successful. Like there's poorly filmed, low quality shows that are Christian comedy that have some great jokes in them here and there, but you got to live with the whole, I don't know if you would even say B movie, C movie, D movie, just because you don't want to watch junk comment. And that was the thing, content. Like that was the thing for me watching this was like, oh man, you almost lost me for 1 second. I have to admit right there was one time Miriam, and she is kind of denigrated as a woman for a second.
Maybe try washing it.
Oh, Miriam,
Doesn't help when you interrupt.
We've got so much to do.
The line is only getting longer.
It's disruptive.
We'll take the notes, please.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Maybe you should try washing it.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, and I don't usually have a problem with anything like that, but I was like, okay, wait a minute, because it's a Bible thing. We don't, as a Christian, you know, I don't want to see the Bible like being made fun of. And for a second there, I was like, oh, what are they going to do this to make the Bible look bad because people are making fun of women in the Bible? And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to see it through. And so for just a second there, my heart twinge was like, oh, come on. Because I know that Jesus loves women just as much, you know, and like, you know, and it's like, and that was never God's heart towards women is is what they went through with oppression during the years that before, you know, I don't know, enlightenment, whatever, yeah, not necessarily, I don't know where I'm going with that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And,
no, I do.
and
Yeah.
So
and then was there a point where that kind of came back around?
oh yeah, it was
Did
complete.
did it?
Everything about this. So so I think maybe people watching this, maybe some people who will reach that same problem. Like, because like Christians, as Christians, I feel like a lot of Christians have that problem. They watch stuff and we become critical of how somebody else portrays Jesus, how somebody else portrays Jesus, even in our personal lives. People are too apt to become critical. And that's what was so enjoyable about this is seeing the silliness side, and then you bring it back around with Jethro and his relationship with Jethro and the women and their relationship with each other, and Zipporah and am I saying that right? Yeah, Zipporah and Moses's wife, and how the two of them were clashing at first, and it's kind of silly and they're jealous of each other, but then the relationship comes back around because it's not just a relationship between two people. It's like it's a witness and testimony of how good God is in their lives together as they're doing God and what God's leading them into the promised land, taking them there.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's all part of the bigger adventure, right?
No, I love that. Yeah. Well, and for me, it was very important too, like with the women, especially with Miriam, you know, Miriam's character, for instance, right? Like you know very little about a lot of the women in some of these stories in the Old Testament. Just there are some that we know a lot about, right?
Like Ruth,
and then those Esther, like those kind of characters.
Yeah.
But you know, the not main character women in some of these stories, like Miriam and Zipporah, they don't get a lot of, if you will, screen time in the Bible. And I think that's more just a matter of just, well, it was they're history books, right? There's only so much that they can talk about in these different stories. But for me, it was fun kind of writing Miriam because I try to take everything that we do know about these characters in the Bible and put them into the character, right? So Miriam, for instance, there's only like really 3 or 4 stories that really name drop her. One is the fact that she would have been older than Moses. She would have seen him as a baby in the river in Egypt. Another one is the fact that when they cross the Red Sea, she leads the women in singing with her tambourine, a song of worship to God. So I was like, okay, she's got a tambourine. And then we know that there's a moment in Scripture where Miriam has a conflict with Moses because of Moses' wife. It doesn't exactly go into the details of why. It just says, that she and Aaron have a conflict with Moses because of Moses' wife. And then Miriam gets leprosy because of it. And then later on, we know that she dies in the desert like they all do. But with the story of her speaking out to Moses, I was like, okay, so clearly one thing we do know about Miriam is that unlike a lot of the women that we hear stories about, she is not afraid to speak her mind. Like clearly she was like, I'm going to go to the leader of Israel, my brother Moses, and I'm going to speak my mind about something, even if it gets her in trouble. And so I was kind of like, all right, so she's outspoken. She's a little bit more like, I'm going to tell you how I think and feel, even though she lives in a time period that doesn't necessarily allow a lot of that for women back in those days. And so, yeah, I was kind of like playing with that a little bit with the building of her character of like, all right, women are not really seen as like first-class citizens, not just by the Israelites, but by most cultures back in those days. However, she's got a bit of a voice. And I'm going to try to, match those things together in a way that's hopefully funny and also, gives an opportunity for a little bit of, hey, what is the sort of female point of view on some of these situations, when the Bible doesn't often talk about that. But yeah, that's really interesting. I like what you were saying.
That's the freedom of creating historical fiction, and like getting to like flush out the character based on some of the creative things that you read about. Now,
yeah,
how did the whole story get flushed out? I mean, did they leave it in your lap as much as like, hey, we want The Office about the Israelites going through the wilderness, and like you've worked all this into writing it up yourself, or do you have a team, or like how the story flush out?
Yeah, so so I'm really grateful that the producers really trusted me to kind of take the concept and run with it, if you will.
Yeah.
There was some discussion about what would that look like, where would it go? Do we tell the story in order in the Bible, or do we shuffle up some of the events so that we can hit some of the bigger events that may have preceded Jethro arriving? But I really saw this show as like an opportunity to kind of be more or less a workplace sitcom, but the workplace is the leadership of Israel, right? The workplace is, instead of it being in the Parks and Rec department, it's in the leadership of Israel department.
Yeah.
And so since it's about leadership, I was like, well, it really works great to kind of start with Jethro, because Jethro teaches Moses how to be a leader. That's, his story in the Bible in that moment. He's teaching Moses how to delegate and how to trust others and how to lead well. And from there, we see Moses sort of try this, right? Because we know later on Moses is going to leave Aaron in charge of the people for 40 days and 40 nights. Doesn't work out great, but he does do it. He does kind of start to take that advice and pass it on. Yeah. And so, yeah, I basically made a plan for where the show would go. And we want to make 40 episodes in a feature. That's the idea. And I have all the, I don't have like, all right, in episode 9, this is going to happen. In episode 15, I don't have it that specific, but I do have, hey, here are the arcs of where we would go and what stories we would hit and how we would work that into how we're building the characters, like Korah has a rebellion against Moses. That'll be later on down the road, but that's a reason why I wanted Korah to be present in this first episode, because that'll be something that happens later. And anyways, yeah, it's in terms of writing, it's just me, and I kind of run a lot of these thoughts and ideas by the producers and by our associate producer Sydney, who had the original concept, to kind of help me with just notes and, hey, what do you think about this or that? But in terms of the writing, at least at the moment, it's just me.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future we might bring on some more people.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot to do on your own.
Yeah, I'd say so. Because that's something that I always strive for when I'm making an episode for YouTube. Is I love the old like Seinfeld, you know, but not because I love Seinfeld so much, but I love the circular nature of those sitcom, you know, where it comes full circle, and I always love it when I'm able to start something at the beginning of the video, and there's a bit of a joke in there, and so I always do these little Dear Diaries, and they always kind of relate to the episode a little bit, like, you know, joking about, you know, I can't remember what, but like, for instance, like, I was always like so impressed with that in the Seinfeld, like how do they manage that to so fully, you know, when Kramer, for instance, that one episode always sticks out in my mind, and at the end, you know, Kramer's talking about the angry sea, and he sticks his hand in, and he pulls out the golf ball, you know, and he has the golf ball in his hand, and the what's his name there? He's like, is that a Titleist 3 or something, you know, because he was driving him into the sea at the beginning of the episode, and it's it comes full circle, you know, and
you know, writing for a style like this, it's definitely like a puzzle, but like a super fun puzzle, because you're kind of thinking about what do you know, what jokes pay off right now, what jokes are going to pay off later, and what setups can kind of lead to this other thing. And, you know, most with the pilot, obviously we have kind of 3 different stories happening at once. You know, they're all kind of similar, but they've got like their own sort of thing going on to it. And it's like, how do we wrap them up and bring them all together, you know, at the end? And I just love that kind of stuff. It's super fun. You're kind of almost working backwards a little bit sometimes with like, all right, I know I got to get them here, but they got to start here. And so, you know, you find where they meet each other. And yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy it.
now that you've already done the first pilot, and you've been thinking about it a whole bunch since then, has there been a couple things you're like, oh man, I wish I put that in the first pilot, but if we squeak it into the next episode, it can eke out in the final, like you mentioned that one guy, like it'll eke out in the final episode and come full circle a bit, because I always feel that I do that. Like I go to watch the edit and I'm like, oh, if only I had thought to say that. How did I miss the punchline, you know? The biggest punchline, the whole video was about it, and I didn't bother I didn't manage to say that Ghostbusters joke, you know, or something.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't necessarily have like a setup thing that I wish I'd done in the pilot, but you know, I think when I watch the pilot now, there are a couple of things where I was just like, man, I would love to do this for the next episodes. And mainly, it's not so much about like the specifics of it as much as like, I guess here's an example. When I watched the pilot, I'm like, man, I would love to have had a scene between Moses and Korra. You know what I mean? They don't actually talk to each other in the show. Korra watches him, but they don't have like a scene together. And what's funny is that they're both now on The Chosen together. It's funny, a lot of the characters who are in The Promised Land, a lot of people think that they came from The Chosen first. Moses was an actor in The Chosen first, but everyone else we kind of discovered in our casting process. And then when Dallas Jenkins saw the pilot in the rough cut form of it, when I was trying to get his notes, he was like, hey, can I hire a couple of these actors on The Chosen? I was like, yeah, totally. But anyways, now that the guy who plays Moses and the guy who plays Korra worked a lot together on The Chosen, sometimes I look back at the pilot and I'm like, man, it'd be so cool if I had them have just even a brief little interaction, but they don't really, other than Korra just kind of reacting to Moses. But that quickly gets remedied when you see the next episode.
It just goes to show you how well your storytelling went, because until you said that about The Chosen, and I've just been watching, I'm on like season 4, the 2 episodes into, is it 4 that's out now, or is it 3? Yeah, I'm on season 4, episode 3, and I didn't even realize that till you just said that. Like, I'm so sucked into the story of each of these characters as I'm watching this that I didn't even realize they had been on The Chosen. And I'm usually pretty good at facial recognition. It's names that I have a hard time with.
Right.
You know,
no, that's great.
That's wild, right?
They're so different. They're so different from the 2 shows. I mean, Miriam plays Herodias in The Chosen, right? So in the first episode of season 4, she's Herod's wife. She's the one trying to get that plot to, you know, kill John the Baptist and all that.
Can't believe I didn't see that.
She's so serious. She's so like Lady Macbeth in that show. And then you see her as Miriam, and it's just like fun and, you know.
Completely different.
She's also so different in real life from those 2 characters, because Shireen is such a like bubbly, friendly person, and she plays these very like heavy characters, which is
more work before we get another episode. That's a bummer, but that's kind of what I figured. This was almost, I wouldn't say too good to be true, because it's really good, and so I'm excited to see where it goes. Have you guys thought about like crowdfunding or something?
So we had considered crowdfunding at kind of the earlier phase of us making the show and forming, the Promised Land company that is making the show. And for us, I think it made a lot more sense just to do more of a private investment situation, seek out more, all right, hey, here are some people who can invest our show, and just kind of run it like that. And I think mainly it's just because the crowdfunding, we weren't sure if it would have the same success that crowdfunding for The Chosen had. I think because Moses is not as key. I mean, Jesus is like the center point of the evangelism of Christianity, right? Like if you're going to have people get to know any character in the Bible, right? You want them to, hey, understanding Jesus, and then let's work on getting to know everyone else in the Bible. Moses is a little bit, he's clearly so valuable to the story, and especially to the Jewish traditions and to understanding the basis of all the law. I mean, he's the key figure basically in the Old Testament. However, it's not as like
It's the
you can
prequel.
have campaigns about Jesus, like the people must know,
Yeah.
but the people don't necessarily must know about Moses. You know what I mean? And so I think our thought with crowdfunding was that it might not have the same kind of impact because it's not as directly evangelical, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's still crucial and it's still a faith-based project, but he's not the Son of God. He's a man that God used in the Old Testament, which is very different. And so, we were kind of like, well, let's go more for the investment route so we can make the show, make it right. We wanted to independently invest and get funding for it outside of the studio system, just because we know it's such a specific tone. I think if this had more kind of studio influence, it could have easily tipped over the edge into being more of like a Monty Python thing.
Yeah.
Or and a little bit more critical, because we're not really critical of the Bible in this show. We're very reverent of the Bible.
Yeah.
The only thing that we're, if you could say irreverent of, is the fact that these are people, right?
Yeah.
These are people who made mistakes. They're not deified. The Bible doesn't deify them. We shouldn't deify them.
Yeah.
They make mistakes. So that's the only thing we're critical of, is just people who make mistakes, But I think a studio might be a little bit more like, well, let's make it, let's harpoon it a little bit, lampoon it a little bit. You know what I mean? And we didn't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
We also didn't want to fall the other way where you lose all the jokes and it just becomes a straight up, serious Chosen clone, basically. So we knew we had to stay kind of unique and with our personality of the show, which is why we wanted independent funding to start with.
Yeah. I think that's wise, because it really turned out good, and you don't want oversight to squish it and things like that. I've worked with TV when I did Alone and things like that, and man, like too much. If you're not independent, that's why I like doing my YouTube, because nobody's telling me I'm allowed to do this or not.
Right.
It's like it takes away some of the beauty of it and stuff, and and maybe we don't want to see it like squash the inspiration that the Holy Spirit and God's putting on this, and stuff. Because it's like, I really liked that when I saw that you guys were filming, and that was another thing that I just really spoke to me too, is when I watched one of your extras, and before you guys went out and filmed, you all stopped and prayed, and it was like, this isn't just, for the sake of making laughs or views. There's more to it than that. Kind of like The Chosen. It's inspired so many people to turn and see Jesus, and to turn to the Bible, to turn, away from things and back to freedom, through Christ. And I hope and pray for that for you guys in this whole series, because it's so beautiful. It was so fun, such a fun adventure. It's one of my, favorite things to read in the Bible outside of Joseph. I'd love to see that one as a series. And
that'd be awesome.
That would be so fun if this led into more for you guys, because imagine the story behind that. I don't know how you'd soften some of the punches there, because it was pretty rough. But I mean, so far you did with this, because later it's going to get pretty heady. There's the idolatry going up the mountain, and how are you going to the glory of God and portraying that, but having fun with it, and then. That's there's some pretty heady stuff there with the people hiding stuff underneath their blankets and then getting sucked into the ground, because Israel, they just came out of bondage, and they're not just in bondage from slavery, right? They're in bondage to idolatry, because they've spent 400 years learning from another society that while still believing that they were different from that society and that God was real. There's still a lot of them, though, that have probably, that were turned aside from that and need to be weaned off of that, and the whole of all of Israel left and had to spend 40 years in the wilderness because of that, because they weren't ready to trust God yet.
Right. And I think that's kind of one of the important things too with the way that we're doing the show is that the jokes and the lightheartedness is really in all of the in-between moments and in the day-to-day life that we're kind of showing for these characters, because when we get to some of the the crucial kind of Bible stories where the characters experience something that hurts or that they make a mistake, those are kind of the moments that we are going to take seriously, which is what I like about this sort of style. It's not necessarily jokes the whole time. It's kind of like 60% jokes, but then there's like that 40% of heart. You know what I mean? And I think when we get to those stories where the characters are hurting, we'll hurt with them and we'll let that be true. And then we'll get back to the jokes when they have a minute to recover from it. And I think that's kind of the way that we're approaching all these things, is that the stuff that the Bible portrays as being very serious, we're going to take very seriously. And the jokes are just going to really be in the fabric that stitches those moments together, because it's like life. You know what I mean? Like when you have a heavy moment, it's heavy, but it doesn't end up being your whole life, right? You still have those lighter-hearted moments and everything in between. And I think the sad moments kind of give light to how nice it was when you're in the lighter moments, and vice versa. It kind of draws some contrast there. So there are definitely going to be some more serious moments coming for sure, and that'll be fun to kind of figure that out and portray it, and stick within these characters and that style with that.
Because the whole Bible is a love story to us, and even that, which was very difficult, was a love story to for them, of how he led them out of Egypt. Which I may say, thank goodness you started after that part, because that would have been a lot of work to doing Egypt,
Red Sea,
the whole different type of people, the Egyptian, the Red Sea, all of that. So it was nice that you skipped over that for you, probably, right? And but it's a love story to Israel and to the world, because he was teaching Israel to be missionaries to the world and to bring Jesus, and set up the preparing for Jesus. This is like the prequel to The Chosen, in a way, that leads to Jesus coming to us and to be able to bring freedom, through him dying on the cross for us. So it's like, it's such a beautiful love story. So, to be able to have some fun with that and tell a interesting, silly, romantic, and hardship all in one thing, is God's heart for us, I think, that people lose track of. It's not the serious, I don't know. I think for like some people think of Christianity maybe as more of a Catholic church, because they've seen that more in videos, or we're genuflecting, we're up, we're down, it's like it's a religious thing, and I don't want to go to church and lose my fun, and they don't understand that God came to bring life and freedom and joy, not constriction and things. And this brings such a lightheartedness to it, but at the same time coming full circle on your story and the Jethro. And then I bawled a little bit, and my kids are like, "Dad, you're such a dork," because when he puts his hand on his shoulder and he tells him how he's proud of him, and it reminded me of what Jesus is going to say to us someday: "Well done, good and faithful servant," and what we all want God to say to us. And he will. Even those of us that haven't done that well, after we've had to confront, what we've done wrong, and he wipes that all away, and it's a clean slate, and he says, tells us how much he loves us face to face, and we're there, and it's over, is going to be amazing. And that I see that coming through in the story, and I was just so, I felt this overwhelming warmth and just, all right, Moses, good job, man, go. Awesome. And Jethro, you're, father-in-law and it up, that's the way to be. That's how I want to be when I interact with people, is to bring life to every situation and encourage them and make them laugh, but, and have fun and build them up, And so it was like that really bring the whole thing into full circle for
glad,
me.
Thanks for sharing that, man. For me, I love that. It's definitely, it is emotional. It is a love story. It is all that. And that's why I think it's fun when you can have kind of multiple tones with it, because I think I think it's just life, life is up and it's down, and it hurts in a bad way and it hurts in a good way, and it's got it all. And I also think that's what's so fun, as like a reference point for me with like these other shows that it's sort of inspired by, like The Office and Parks and Rec. Like when I think about shows that I've watched and the times that I've cried watching a show, a lot of times it's those types of shows. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've watched The Office, but like the episode where Michael Scott comes to Pam's art show, like tears. Like there's so many like just moments like that where it's just like it reminds you how kind of beautiful life can be sometimes. You spend a lot of time showing the like nitty gritty of whatever, but then you find these moments where it's like it's incredible and it's beautiful, and yeah, like you said, like there is a lot of this story is the kind of the foundation of it's really through Moses that God established the law, and it was through the law that God kind of brought about Jesus to be the fulfillment of that law, right? So as we're seeing the law, we'll see it more in the next few episodes, right, that are written and that we'll be filming soon. You really kind of, especially when you start to see like the creation of the tabernacle and the creation of the system of people making a sacrifice so that they can be closer to God, is kind of really, all right, here's the system that then God is going to use to sort of break the barrier between him and us in terms of our relationship, right? It's through Jesus that we can have a relationship with him. But all of that gets established through Moses. It starts at this point. So we're really seeing kind of the the beginning phases, like you're saying, of this story and of this pursuit of God to us. And it's really fun. It's really beautiful. I think I wanted to mention something that you said earlier about people watching this and then hopefully kind of rereading some of these stories, and at least the goal, but like with us praying with that one extra before we started, I think for all of us, our goal with this show is that, one, we want to make good art. We want to make a show that is funny, a show that's well made, a show that's enjoyable, all of that, right? If you don't make good art, people won't really care what it's about, right? But if we make that, then I think our goal is people watch the show, they say, we want to go back and read these stories. And if they read the story of Moses, maybe they'll keep reading and they'll read about Jesus too, right?
Yeah.
My favorite comment we've gotten so far, someone said, man, this is so funny, but I'm going to have to go back and reread some of these stories because I forgot a lot of these or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. Mission accomplished. We did it. Just for that one person to say that and read it, we did it. It was all worth it. And I think that's our kind of approach to all of it.
Yeah, it's a little hard too sometimes though, like when, not in a bad way, but it's funny, I guess, how after watching this and then like, I think that Our Daily Bread covered something after I had seen this that was, Moses, and like, and I'm like, all I can picture is you're Moses, and that those people like that. It was funny the same way, kind of The Chosen at times, like watching enough of The Chosen that I kind of visualize those characters as the characters in the Bible, and it's made me a lot more interested in the actual writers of the New Testament, watching The Chosen myself, because like like Matthew's my favorite, and so like watching that, I'm like, oh man, I read it and then I see that kind of character coming through of his methodicalness and his no nonsense and self and things, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to meet that guy someday. That's gonna be cool, and it's like it's gonna be neat. I
love that stuff. I think it makes it fun. I think it can be challenging to engage sometimes with the Bible because it is such an older, is written in an older way, and it's an older text. All of it, it's older, and I think anything that can help you sort of see relationship with the people who are in it, and with people who wrote it, and people through God, and the people who are involved in these stories, I think it makes it so much more real. Not that it couldn't feel real and be real all on its own anyways, but I think anything that kind of helps you sort of, as you're looking at it, you engage with it more, like what you're describing, of like, all right, I now have a mental picture with some of these characters. I'm a big mental picture guy, and so kind of the same way for me after working on The Chosen for these past 5 seasons too, when I read some of these stories like in John or really any of them, I do kind of picture our disciples from The Chosen and how that all works, and their different idiosyncrasies and how they were as people, and it makes it fun. When I read stuff like Jesus said this and then the disciples didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I can picture, I just picture them. I'm like, well, you know what I mean? And it helps. It makes it feel like, all right, on to the next one. I'm picturing it. I'm vibing with it. Let's go. And that's good and helpful.
Yeah, I think you kind of brought up a thing that's gone a little bit off to the chosen, but it reminds me that I had a little sticking point. Like as I read the scriptures, I felt like sometimes Jesus was too critical of the disciples. Like he already knows what boneheads we all are, right? And then he was too critical. But it was cool to see in the chosen how they portrayed Jesus confronting them about things, and like the Sons of Thunder when he confronts them, there was so much love and compassion in how he confronted them. And when I read that in the Bible, I kind of felt like, man, he's really laying it on them. That's a little critical of Jesus. Like he's pretty strict and pretty harsh.
Yeah.
But the chosen portrayed it, and it made me think about it and kind of pray about it. Like, you know what? Am I reading this wrong? Am I seeing this wrong from the Bible? Like I'm putting my own wrong-mindedness onto the scripture sometimes when I'm reading it, because just like when we read a text from somebody and we maybe are frustrated with them, we assume that they're being critical of us when they're just they were just responding, and they didn't even have a thought in their head about anything. Like we're reading the text wrong because we're basing that on what we believe of them or something like that. When we know and we base what we read of the scriptures on the fact that God loves us, he loved us so much that he came and he died for us, and that, there is no length that he wouldn't go for us, and it's a love story. It's like, oh, okay, that makes more sense at times. And to get to portray that in your story and stuff with them, I just can't wait to see how that all flushes out, honestly. Yeah. It's going to be cool.
I love that.
Now, how can we... going forward, you're saying you're not crowdfunding, but is there some way that we could support you? I mean, that's why I wanted to meet with you and do this, so I could share this video so people could see it. It gets more views. They get to just enjoy it. But how can we support you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. Yeah, so the funding that we have is for making the episodes specifically, right? Like we have, and it looks like we will have what we need to make the episodes themselves. However, there's still a lot of other things that we need to do as kind of the people who are making the Promised Land, right? Like we still need to get the show out there. We still need to release the show. We still need to find and continue to build the audience for the show. And there are a couple ways that you can support us with doing that, right?
Okay.
We actually are going live very soon with a give button on our website at the promisedlandseries.tv. And when you give there, it's not crowdfunding for the specific episodes. It's not like other crowdfunding projects you've seen where it's like, all right, if you give this much, that'll help us get episode 2 done or episode 4 done or, whatever. It's more about helping extend our reach.
Yeah.
Because again, we're not studio funded. So everything helps us basically as the Promised Land making the show. It helps us reach a little bit further, right? Every bit that is given to the show helps us with our marketing, with our engagements, with, hey, now we can actually have the conversation about making the show be dubbed in a different language for other countries, right? Things like that are things that are expenses that exist outside of making the episodes themselves.
Yeah.
So you can give through the give button on the website to help with that. You can also buy merch from the store. A purchase of that, it really does kind of feed back into giving us more resources to do those same things I just mentioned, right? And then honestly, another huge thing people can do is just to share the word, like you're doing right now with this. And people who tell their friends about it. And my favorite thing is when I hear people say, hey, I went to church this weekend and I told my friend, and then they watched it with their family. They had a blast, and now they're showing their friends. It's great because that's how you get it out there. You want to, even with regular TV shows that aren't faith-based, I think you always feel like you have a better reason to watch something when someone in your life has seen it and enjoys it, right? If a buddy of yours is like, hey, you got to watch Stranger Things, you're going to listen to that buddy more than you're going to listen to the internet or whatever telling you to watch it. So the more that you tell your friends and family about watching the show, that really helps us get the word out. Giving on the site or buying merchandise or just sharing about the show, those are the biggest ways that people can help us make this show grow and make
the usual ways for YouTube, comment, and share, and that will help them with the YouTube views. That YouTube will push it further to more people, so it'll end up popping up in people's feeds, and then people will choose to watch it or not. But
exactly, it's all that algorithm stuff that I don't even fully understand, but I know this. I know it's all really about engagement. I know that when people watch it on YouTube, that's great.
Yeah.
But when people comment on it and they say, "Man, I really liked the Egyptian character." You know,
oh yeah, he was great. That's so fun. Yeah, I can't wait to see how that fleshes out. The way he kept and then he runs off, and like I was a little frustrated with him, honestly, though. Like dude, you've been in the camp for how many days, and like you haven't pretended to be part of a certain tribe yet. Like he still hadn't worked on his backstory. Like
he's not.
Flush out your backstory already. You could just make anything up. Like nobody's gonna know. And when you're in the tribe of Judah or whatever, then you make a backstory about the tribe of Simeon or it's not that hard.
His homework.
He
do his homework.
Not at all. Like he's just avoided everybody, and he's just super confused by the whole Hebrew thing. But he survived the waters clapping together, and he's the only Egyptian among a whole bunch of other people. So it's funny.
One great comment that I love is that someone was like, because we love hearing people's like merchandise recommendations, because we want to incorporate that. And one person that I love, they commented the quote from him. They were like, "I want a T-shirt that says I have very important Hebrew things to do," and I was like, "Yeah, we can probably make that."
That's a good,
But all to say, when people leave that comment, or when they, whether it's on YouTube or even if it's on like our Instagram page or Facebook on the reels or whatnot that we're posting too, like that really just helps get it out, because obviously, as you know, like, when you are like, "Hey, I like this thing," the algorithms inside each of these social media platforms, they say, "Okay, if Zachary liked it, then I think people who are similar to Zachary would also like this," and then it gets it out there, and that's a big part of what helps us build an audience, and it extends our reach. It makes it get in front of more people.
Well, thank you. This is I'm excited to see more. And everybody watching, make sure you check out those links in the description, or just type in Promised Land pilot episode, watch it for the first time, and enjoy and share it with a friend. And we'll be hopefully seeing more of that. And do you have any knowledge right now or hints of where it might be going to with the next episodes?
Oh, I can give a couple hints.
Yeah.
If you take a look at Exodus and you take a look at what happens right after Jethro leaves, you can kind of see what we're getting to in the next few episodes. We're going to make 5 more. That's kind of the rest of season 1. Are going to be 5 more episodes, and that's really going to encompass their time at the base of Mount Sinai. And so we're going to be spending quite a bit of time right there, with everything that happens at the base of Mount Sinai. If you guys want to read about that to see what happens, there's a lot that happens. And we'll be covering that in the next 5. But specifically, the very next thing that happens in the story is that Moses, taking Jethro's advice, appoints people to be leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and of 10s. And I'm very excited for you guys to see who ends up being a leader of 10.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
in the show. It's going to be fun.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching, everybody. And check out the links in the description below, or just type in Promised Land show on YouTube, pilot episode. Watch that. Enjoy. It really is great. Watch it with your family. Watch it with your friends. Share it with somebody. Bug several other somebodies. Share it on Facebook. Like, comment, share anything that you can possibly think to do to support this if you enjoy the content, because it's the best. Like I said at the beginning, it's, I think, one of the best contents I've ever seen created, and it was so fun. I love The Chosen, and this is like, I felt like right up there with it, and I can't wait to see where they go from there. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Oh yeah, and check out their website. All that stuff's links in the description. Just go down there and just spend some time and have some fun. So we will see you guys later. Fowler out.